Imagine walking into your bedroom and finding the severed head of your secret lover sitting in a glass jar right on your nightstand. This was not a scene from a horror movie, but a Tuesday morning for Catherine, the wife of Peter the Great. Peter the Great is usually remembered as the man who built Russia into a superpower and founded the beautiful city of St. Petersburg. But behind the maps and the grand ships was a man who stood 6 feet 8 inches tall and had a temper that terrified even his closest friends. He was a giant who could bend horseshoes with his bare hands and often carried a heavy cane to beat people who annoyed him. In this video, we are looking at the dark side of his genius and the moment his personal life took a turn into pure nightmare territory. We are going to explore how a secret affair led to one of the most gruesome displays of power in royal history. To understand why Peter would put a head in a jar, you first have to understand who he was as a man. Peter was obsessed with making Russia modern, but his own methods were often straight out of the brutal Middle Ages. He once forced his noblemen to shave their long traditional beards, and if they refused, he would literally rip the hair off their faces himself. The Tsar was a man of logic and science, but he was also a man of extreme, uncontrollable violence when he felt betrayed. His wife, Catherine, was someone he truly loved, which is what makes this story so much more intense and unsettling. Catherine was not born a royal. She was a peasant girl who worked as a laundress before catching the eye of the Russian military. She was smart, funny, and she was the only person who could calm Peter down when his seizures and rage took over. Peter trusted her completely, which in his world was a very rare and dangerous thing to do for any ruler. Because he trusted her, she had a lot of power, and she hired a man named Willem Mons to be her personal secretary. Willem Mons was handsome, charming, and very good at navigating the complicated world of the Russian royal court. He was also the younger brother of Anna Mons, a woman who had been Peter's favorite mistress many years before. Because of this family connection, Willem was already close to the Tsar's inner circle and knew exactly how to behave. Willem's job was to manage Catherine's schedule and her money, but soon people started whispering that he was doing much more. Rumors began to spread through the palace that Catherine and Willem were having a passionate, secret affair right under Peter's nose. In the Russian court, everyone was watching everyone else, and information was the most valuable thing you could own. Eventually, an anonymous letter or a jealous courtier brought these rumors directly to Peter the Great himself. Now, Peter was a man who hated lying more than almost anything else in the world, especially from his own family. Instead of exploding right away, Peter decided to watch and wait, looking for any proof that his wife was being unfaithful. He discovered that Willem Mons was taking bribes from people who wanted to get favors from the Empress Catherine. In those days, taking bribes was common, but Peter used this as the legal excuse to arrest Willem and destroy him. In November 1724, Peter ordered the immediate arrest of Willem Mons, and the clock began ticking for the young secretary. Willem was taken to the secret chancery, which was basically Peter's personal torture chamber for high-level prisoners. The interrogation was brutal because Peter wanted a confession not just about the money, but about the bedroom secrets too. Within just a few days, Willem Mons was found guilty of corruption and sentenced to death by beheading. On the morning of the execution, Peter showed no mercy and made sure the entire court knew what happened to traitors. Willem was led to the chopping block, and with one swift strike of the axe, his life and his career were over. But for Peter the Great, simply killing the man who might have slept with his wife was not enough of a punishment. He wanted to make sure Catherine never forgot the price of betrayal for as long as she lived. Peter had the head of Willem Mons preserved in a large glass jar filled with alcohol and vinegar to keep it from rotting. He then took this jar and placed it in Catherine's private bedroom, right where she would have to see it every single day. Imagine the psychological horror of waking up and seeing the face of someone you cared about staring back at you from a jar. Catherine was a strong woman, and she reportedly didn't cry or scream when she saw the gruesome trophy in her room. She knew that if she showed too much emotion, Peter might decide that she was the next one who needed to be executed. She kept her cool, continued her duties, and acted as if the severed head of her friend was just another piece of furniture. Peter's ruthlessness wasn't just saved for lovers. He was even more brutal when it came to his own flesh and blood. Years earlier, he suspected his own son, Alexei, of plotting against him and trying to take the throne by force. He didn't just exile his son, he had him brought back to Russia, tortured him, and sentenced him to death for treason. If Peter was willing to kill his own son to protect his power, a secretary like Willem Mons stood no chance at all. The Tsar believed that Russia was his project, and anyone who messed with his vision or his family was an obstacle to be removed. This head-in-a-jar incident happened only a few months before Peter himself passed away in early 1725. Some historians believe the stress of the betrayal and his failing health combined to bring the great giant down. After Peter died, Catherine actually became the Empress of Russia in her own right, moving from peasant to sole ruler. One of her first acts was to remove the head from her sight, but she didn't just throw it away or bury it. The head of Willem Mons was sent to the Kunstkammer, which was Peter's Museum of Oddities and Scientific Wonders in St. Petersburg. Peter had started this museum to show off strange things like preserved animals, skeletons, and unusual medical specimens. He believed that by showing these things to the public, he could teach them about science and move them away from superstitions. For a long time, the head of the man who loved an empress sat on a shelf next to two-headed fetuses and weird jars of fish. It stayed there for decades, a silent witness to the absolute power of the Romanov dynasty and Peter's terrifying legacy. In the late 1700s, another famous ruler named Catherine the Great reportedly found the jar while exploring the museum's basement. She was horrified by the sight and ordered that the head finally be buried so the poor man could have some peace. Even today, visitors to the museum in St. Petersburg can feel the heavy history of Peter's strange and violent reign. Peter changed the world, but he did it with a level of cruelty that most modern people find impossible to imagine. He was a man who could build a navy from nothing, but would destroy a life over a single secret affair. The story of the head in the jar serves as a reminder that being great in history often came with a very high body count. Peter's life was a mix of brilliant progress and dark personal vengeance that left the people around him in constant fear. He dragged Russia into the future, but he used the severed heads of his enemies as stepping stones to get there.